Now, did you know that one of the greatest gifts that Johnny Cash ever received came by the way of embezzlement? Well, it did. He had an accountant who was using Johnny Cash's money to buy properties. One of them was a farm in Bon Aqua, Tennessee. Now, when Johnny found out, he sold all of the properties except that one, which became his hideaway from the music industry. We visited there, and we met a man who is bringing it back to life for Johnny Cash fans, which means pretty much everybody. 40 miles outside Nashville and 1,000,000 miles from the pressures of the music business, there's a former country store and quiet farm where Johnny Cash would get away with his wife, June. I took a trip there to meet Brian Oxley, a historian who has reopened it all as Storytellers Museum and Hideaway Farm. How in the world did you decide, I'm going to buy this general store out in the middle of nowhere and turn it into a tribute to Johnny Cash?
We own this farm down the road, and we were going through his library, and we found a VHS video on the library. We watched it. It wasn't good quality, but it was his 20 years in the music celebration party that happened somewhere. We spent 2 months looking for it. We discovered it happened in this building. So then we came over. I climbed into the window right there. This place was total disaster.
Now, is that a confession that you broke into a building you didn't own?
Yeah, I do things like that,
okay.
Yes.
Just wanted to,
yeah.
I think the statute of limitations may have run out at this point.
This place was pretty much condemned. But all I wanted to see is one thing, was the stage there. And I knew if the stage was there, this was history. And that's how this journey started.
So this was, at one time, an old general store.
That's right.
The store closed. Then it became a recording studio. And Johnny Cash recorded here and played here. They turned it into a little performance hall for a while?
Well, what happened is this place was bought by a guy named Red Wortham, because he published a song called Just Walking in the Rain by the Prisonaires. And that man, this is his studio. And then he ended up, at some point, selling it to Johnny Cash, who then had this for several years.
Not far from here, what, a mile, is the farm Johnny Cash loved to spend time.
Yes.
What was so special about that farm?
Johnny Cash came out here with his wife, and he went into the house, he goes upstairs, he jumps twice, and then says, "This place is not for sale." And from that moment on, it became what he called the center of his universe, his paradise. The people of this county, this is one of the poorest counties in Tennessee, they left him alone. They knew when he came to the farm, he was here for peace. But he still wanted to reach out to the people. This is the stage. Not so much recording, but this is the stage in which he would have what they call Saturday Night Hickman County. And so you talk to the locals, they all remember when Johnny Cash and June Carter would sing on this little stage.
The fact that Johnny Cash, who was at that time singing to tens of thousands of people in sold-out arenas, but he would come here to this little stage and just do an old-fashioned country picking.
Yes.
That has to be something that locals will embrace forever.
Oh, yes. And the thing is, but Johnny Cash treated everybody the same. You know, you listen to the song, The Man in Black. You know, he's talking about prisoners. He's talking about poor people. It didn't matter if you're president of the United States or a peasant. He treated people alike. And that's why I believe people have a special feeling for Johnny Cash, because they knew he was that way. He treated everybody the same.
I had the best time with Brian, with all the great memorabilia and the history out at Storytellers Museum and the farm. I hope you'll take a trip there, because if you come to Nashville and you're going to say, well, I want to see the sights, make sure you make this one, because you're going to make some great memories. You can find out a whole lot more of the details at StorytellersMuseum.com. Johnny Cash lived here in Hendersonville, Tennessee, very, very close to this theater where we do our show. What made you interested in writing a book about Johnny Cash?
Well, I just always was a fan of Johnny Cash, you know, and I grew up really appreciating him. And after I became a Christian in 1970 during the Jesus movement, and I know you were impacted that time in your life as well, I saw I wasn't there, but I heard Johnny Cash singing at Explo.
I was there.
There in Dallas, and Johnny Cash is a Christian. And of course, the other thing we can't forget is Johnny made many appearances at Billy Graham crusades at the height of his popularity. And in fact, Johnny and Billy were good friends. You know, here's the contradiction of Cash. Who could be friends with Willie Nelson, Waylon Jennings, and Billy Graham all at the same time? Answer, Johnny Cash.
What did you discover about Johnny Cash that was most surprising?
Well, you know, interesting about Johnny Cash. Sinners thought he was a saint, and saints thought he was a sinner. But whenever he would get into trouble, and Johnny got into a lot of trouble, he was arrested on multiple occasions. Though he never served time in prison, people think he was a prisoner because he sang in prisons, but he did serve jail time. Here's what I discovered. I did not know the depths of his struggle with amphetamines and other substances, but I also learned a lot more about the depth of his faith. You know, Johnny had the devil at his back and an angel on his shoulder and God on speed dial. and he was a man who I would describe as an accessible saint, meaning this: Johnny was a Christian, there's no doubt about that, but he had his ups and downs, his highs and lows. But even when he went astray, he always returned to that bedrock faith that he had going back to the days of picking cotton on the fields there in Arkansas. And so he became a legend, a global legend, really. He is described as the voice of America, the godfather of cool. Chris Christopherson described Johnny Cash as Abraham Lincoln with a wild side. So he was a contradiction at times, but when it was all said and done, he had a deep faith he always returned to. And I would say that at the beginning of his career, he started off really strong musically, and he ended really strong musically, and the same could be true said of his spiritual life. He started and ended very strong in his faith.
Isn't it great? Because it's all how we end that matters the most. But I think what you've just described is not just Johnny Cash, but Pastor Laurie, that is the life of many of a believer. It's not always easy to walk the life of faith in this world.
No.
And with all the pressures on him, I think we can understand. It's why I think your book is such a gift to the world, because you describe a person who loves God, who is trying to follow Christ, but often finds himself falling off the trail, tumbling down into every kind of ditch imaginable, but at least getting back up and finding his way.
That's true, Governor. And I would say that the real takeaway message of this book is God gives second chances. So if you've messed up, you can get back in the race. Like you said, it's really, when it's all said and done, how you finish the race. I mean, if you're running a 10-lap race and you're running first place for 9 of the laps and you walk off the truck on the 10th lap, you lose. Johnny finished well. He had an incredible resurgence of his career when a producer named Rick Rubin, who had produced a lot of rock acts, went and kind of got Johnny back to his roots and recorded him in his front room with just Johnny and that guitar. Nobody had the voice of Johnny Cash, even the way he played guitar. And I think some of the best songs he ever recorded in his career, including The Man Comes Around, Rusty Cage, and songs he did that other people had written, like I Won't Back Down, and even Personal Jesus, a song that he repurposed. He made them his own, and of course, he was best known for his song Hurt, which was written by a guy named Trent Reznor. But Johnny sort of made it a biographical song as his life was coming to a close. But in a final interview that he did with Kurt Loder of MTV News, this was after his wife June had preceded him to heaven. Kurt asked him, you know, do you have a lapse in your faith? He says, my faith is unshakable. And he was very strong in the end, and actually looked forward to going to be with the Lord and being reunited with his wife. So, you know, what a wonderful story it was, and what an adventure it was to discover so much about a true American icon.
The book is called Johnny Cash, The Redemption of an American Icon. You can get it at Amazon, you can get it at other booksellers, or you can find it along with Greg Laurie's other great books, his inspirational messages, and so much more at harvest.org.